Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Steph Kershaw, and I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the Matilda Centre for Research in Mental Health and Substance Use, and I'm also project coordinator for Cracks in the Ice online toolkit. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you today to this Cracks in the Ice webinar, Where Can I Find Culturally Appropriate Evidence-Based Resources About Methamphetamine? Now, before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I'm currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to further acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which you are all on today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the many community members who have provided input into this work and who have generously shared their stories with Cracks in the Ice. Now, as participants today, I'd just like to let you know that you are in listen-only mode, and that means that we can't see or hear you. However, you will notice that you have a Q&A button on your dashboard, and this is where you can type in questions that you have during the webinar and send them through to us. We'll then have a question and answer section at the end of the webinar. I would like to let you know that we are recording today's session and we'll be making the recording as well as the slides available to you through the Cracks in the Ice website. So now I'm going to start off today's webinar with a little background about methamphetamine and its effects. So as many of you may know, methamphetamine is a stimulant drug, and that means that it speeds up the central nervous system of the body and triggers the release of chemicals in the brain. And the outcome of this is that people feel alert and excited. Now, methamphetamine comes in three forms: crystal or ice, base, and speed. And these forms vary in purity and potency, with crystal often being the more pure form compared to the other variants. Because it is generally more potent and pure, it gives the user a stronger and longer lasting feeling of euphoria, but can also increase the risk of side effects, particularly if used heavily and frequently. Now, it's quite difficult to measure how many people are using methamphetamine in Australia, but what we do know is that among Australians who are using methamphetamine, they are now reporting using crystal as the main form of the drug, and this increase has happened in the last 10 years or so. People are also reporting using methamphetamine more frequently, and there's been a rise in methamphetamine-related harms across a number of data sets, including increased helpline calls, hospital admissions, as well as drug-related deaths. Also in Australia, we're seeing that there is a higher use of methamphetamine in regional, rural and remote areas compared to capital cities. And there is also information that people from remote and very remote areas are receiving hospital care for methamphetamine-related problems at a higher rate than people from capital cities. But it's also really important to acknowledge that the effects of crystal methamphetamine stretch far beyond just the person who uses the drug. It also impacts families, friends, communities, and workplaces. For family and friends of people who use methamphetamine, there can be a lot of anxiety, worry, and distress about their loved one. Sometimes these family members will even end up neglecting their own needs for sleep, nutrition, and social activities because they are devoting so much time and energy to caring for their loved one. And this can lead to them developing mental health issues of their own. It's also important to acknowledge that methamphetamine is a drug associated with a lot of stigma and shame. And so this stigma and shame can also impact families and friends. Now, methamphetamine is also a drug that communities are really worried about. So in the last two National Drug Strategy Household Surveys, which is the largest survey in Australia about alcohol and other drugs, Australians in this top graph, as you'll see here, rated methamphetamine as the drug most likely to be associated with a drug problem. So that was 49% of the community compared to 6.4 for alcohol and 1.6 for tobacco. And also community members felt that it was the drug of most concern to the community, with 40% of participants saying they thought methamphetamine was the drug of most concern compared to alcohol and tobacco. So in response to the growing concern, the Australian government established a national ICE task force to provide advice on the impacts of crystal methamphetamine in Australia and the actions needed to address use-related harms. And a key recommendation from the task force was to develop an online toolkit to provide information and resources to families and communities. And it was on the back of this specific recommendation that Cracks in the Ice online toolkit was developed. So as some of you may be familiar with the general Cracks in the Ice toolkit, there is information and resources that are relevant for family and friends of people, health workers, schools and community groups. But based on the feedback from this original website, we found that there was a need for culturally inclusive resources for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So this was highlighted as particularly important as it's been reported that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples often experience a disproportionate burden of harm from crystal methamphetamine use. And so the aim of this project that we'll be presenting on today is to improve access to culturally appropriate evidence-based information about crystal methamphetamine, and also to help guide people who would like access to services and support depending on their needs. So the tree figure to the left of this slide represents the different phases of this project in its development in the roots of community consultation to its launch and future growth. And the work of this project was overseen and guided by an expert advisory group made up of Aboriginal elders, as well as drug and alcohol researchers from across Australia. So in total, 240 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people provided input into the development of the website through focus groups and online beta testing. So I'm now going to hand over to Katie Dean, who is a research project officer at the Matilda Centre and project manager of this resource. And Katie's going to talk through the development of the website, as well as give you a short tour of some of the key website features. So thank you, Katie. I'm now going to hand over to you to make the presentation.
Thanks, Steph. I'm also presenting today from the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people present and listening today. The first phase of development involved extensive community consultation. Across Australia, 15 focus groups were conducted in metropolitan cities, rural and regional towns servicing remote communities. These cities and locations were Adelaide, Perth, Cairns, Albany, Alice Springs and Broome. The aim of the focus groups was to identify the questions Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members had regarding crystal methamphetamine and its harms, and also to understand what people wanted to include on the website and how to address the questions from the community and the best way answers can be presented in an online format. There are 166 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people involved in the focus groups, and this included community members, health workers, people who have used ICE, and family and friends of people who have used ICE. Focus groups identified that there were 4 main areas of concern to communities, and these are shown on the right of this slide. And that includes harms to those who use ICE, availability and accessibility of support services, impacts on families and communities, and the supply and demand of ICE. Focus groups also identified that they would like to see key content areas on these topics, as well as the general facts, rates or prevalence of use, and how to know if a person may be using crystal methamphetamine. Focus groups also identified that resources should be tailored for health workers, family and friends, community members, and people who use ICE. Participants were also passionate about understanding and improving access to locally based support services and knowing how to navigate the treatment system. When asked about how these ideas can be presented, focus group participants highlighted that the imagery should create empathy and break down stigma. The next stage involved developing these resources. So based on the ideas shared in the focus groups, the Cracks in the Ice team developed a number of animations, 28 fact pages, 4 hard copy brochures, and a range of interactive features and unique culturally appropriate designs. I'll be showing some of these resources later in this presentation. We then asked community members to provide feedback on these resources. And this was to ensure the resources met the needs and requests of the focus groups. The key aim of seeking feedback on the resources, or otherwise known as beta testing, was to test the initial toolkit design, usability of resources developed, and determine what improvements were needed. We obtained ethics approval for South Australia, New South Wales, and Western Australia to test the website. In total, 116 participants completed the survey, and of this, 73 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples participated. The feedback was positive, with 74% of people saying they would recommend the website to others. And we can see there 92% said that it was clear what information they can get from the cracks in the ice. Participants who identified as a family or friend were asked to provide feedback on what fact pages they would be most likely to access. 6 fact pages were presented to participants to choose from, and the top 2 were what to do if someone won't seek support and concerned about someone using ice. Overall, the findings from beta testing were really positive. Participants felt that the language was factual and appropriate, and suggestions for improvements included a bigger range of hard copy resources to cover more topics in the future. As we can see there, 86% of health workers indicated the landing page would be very much so helpful when looking for resources about ice. And that quote there is just an example of some feedback we received. Excitingly, the toolkit has now been live since June 2021. I'll now show some of our key resources that are live on the site. When you first visit Cracks in the Ice, you will land on this homepage. To navigate to the portal for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, you can either click the blue tile located here, or scroll to the top of the page and click on the title in the toolbar. Here we are on the homepage for the portal. If you want to navigate back to wider resources, you can click the logo in the top left at any time. Our user-friendly homepage splits the resources into 3 tiles for the main end user groups: family and friends, health workers, and community members. Each of these tiles takes you to a landing page featuring tailored resources for those groups. Below these, we have facts about methamphetamine. In the green circle, videos, and soon to be added are stories. And in the yellow circle, resources available in 3 languages, being Warlpiri, Torres Strait Islander Creole, and Pitjantjatjara. Scrolling further down, we have a build your own poster feature, a tile to where you can order and download brochures for free, including delivery. And there is also a list of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander specific support services in your region. We'll check these out in a bit. Firstly, let's have a look at the family and friends resources. This page has tips for families and friends on how to start a chat with someone using methamphetamine, how to protect yourself and others, and places you can get support. To navigate back at any time, click Return Home at the top. Or if you need support, click the yellow Get Support button in the top right-hand corner. To show more resources, click the Show More button. Each of these squares takes you to a resource. There is also a key fact box, and you can click through a range of facts about methamphetamine. Now let's have a look at the health workers page. This section provides a range of evidence-based fact sheets, guidelines, and online resources for professionals working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be affected by crystal methamphetamine either through their own drug use or loved ones. Again, to show more resources, click the Show More button. All these tiles take you to a resource. Let's click on one to show you an example. Our longer fact pages have a summary box at the top. All our fact pages are also narrated in English. Click the play button to listen to that section. To return to the health workers page, you can click it in the top toolbar here. You can also view some external resources. These are external evidence-based resources from other organisations that we link to. If we navigate back now to the home page, we can show you through resources for community members. This page provides local councils, community groups, or worried community members some tools to use at community events or to share with others. Some of the resources here include evidence-based fact sheets, brochures, and a build your own poster feature. Let's have a look at that. This feature was designed so that people could print out both posters or handouts for their local workplace or community centre. This allows people to create their own fact sheet from a number of key evidence-based messages, accompanying graphics and colour schemes. To get started, select what size you would like the poster to be. This will be the size the poster will print out as. Next, you can select your key message. The toolbar on the left shows where you are up to. You can click those icons to go to that section. Let's make a poster about the effects of ice. Now we have our key message. We can select a picture. This one has short-term and long-term effects of ice. Now I can choose the colour I prefer. Now we are done, I'll click print. Here you can save your poster to your computer as a PDF, or you can print it. To return to the home page, click the Return Home button. Or if you would like to go back to the Resources for Community, select that in the top toolbar. Let's go back to the home page and have a look at some of the other resources. If we click the Videos and Stories circle, here are 6 animated videos covering key topics of need identified in the focus groups. Participants from the focus groups also highlighted how important it is to have a range of audio and visual resources available. To play the animation, click Learn More or anywhere on the tile. You can make them full screen after they're playing by selecting the square button in the bottom right-hand corner. We will soon be adding more videos to this page, so stay tuned in the new year. Let's have a look at some of the resources in language. Some of the main fact pages, such as what is ice and its effects, are translated into 3 languages, including Pitjantjatjara, Torres Strait Islander Creole, and Maori. They also have narrations in language. These 3 languages were chosen in collaboration with our expert advisory group, and we hope to be able to get funding to extend this work. These can be accessed through the homepage, as well as through the community landing page. To view all resources, click the View All Resources box. Let's return to the home page again to have a look at the support services list. To access this, click the orange Support Services tile. This page provides a list of local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health services and alcohol and other drug services located in your area. This has been drawn from state and territory-based Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Council member lists. Scroll down to the map. You can use your mouse scroller to zoom in on a region. Alternatively, click a region to view the available support services. Further national and state-based directories are listed below. At any stage, as you progress through the website, you can select the yellow Get Support button at the top of the web page. Click the More Services button to navigate to a list of support services near you. Let's return home again and check out a video. There is a video about the artwork that is featured on the website that sits at the bottom of the homepage, featuring Jenna Lee, an Aboriginal artist who designed the artwork. In the video, she explains the inspiration and meaning behind the beautiful artwork featured throughout the website. Click the play button and it will play within the website. So that's a really quick tour of the website. We hope you found it helpful. If you'd like to learn more about us, the project and its development, you can click the About Us section at the top of the page. So we spoke through how to order brochures on the homepage through the blue brochures tile. There are 4 brochures available, and their aim is to summarise key information from the Cracks in the Ice website. There are electronic versions available online for free to download, or you can also order these in hard copy form and have them posted to you also for free. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the Australian Government Department of Health for its ongoing funding of the project. I would also like to thank the Cracks in the Ice team and its collaborators, as well as the many community members that have provided valuable input on the project. And thanks, Steph. I'll hand back to you to conclude the presentation and begin the question and answer section.
So thank you, Katie. That was a great presentation. We've now got some time for questions and answers. I'm just going to invite my colleague, Anna Granger, who's a research assistant at the Matilda Centre for Research in Mental Health and Substance Use, to assist me with the Q&A portion. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Steph. Thank you for having me, and thank you for such an interesting presentation. So we now have a few minutes for questions, and we've had a few come through during the session, which is very exciting. Just a reminder that if you do have a question, please do pop it through the question and answer box, which is at the bottom of your screen. So the first one that that's come through is, what was a key piece of feedback from participants that stood out to you during the beta testing process?
Oh, that's a great question, Anna. Well, there were a few things that came out of beta testing. While everyone had really positive thoughts about the question about the website, there were 2 sort of main areas. Firstly, people wanted to see more summary sections on the web pages because some of the content is quite long. So we've up-to-dated that, particularly for the health worker pages. And the other one was actually around developing stories with people with lived experience. And this is something that we're planning to do in the new year, and we're really excited about. And I think Katie referred to it when she said that we'll be hoping to upload some more videos into the video section, and hopefully that will be done early next year.
That sounds really interesting. So the next one that we've had come through is, why did you select the 3 languages for translations? And are you planning on expanding those resources in language in the future?
It was really hard to make the decision about which languages we should do our translations in initially. We only had a set budget for development, so we discussed it in depth with our expert advisory group, who's made up of Aboriginal elders and experts across the country. And we settled on those 3 languages initially, but we are hoping to get more funding next year to expand the resources. And we're hoping to be able to continue to provide those translations both orally and in written form.
Great. Okay, so the next one we have is, how does the website encourage help seeking for people who use crystal methamphetamine?
Yes, so at the moment we don't have a dedicated section for people who use crystal methamphetamine as it's still in development. But there are a number of resources for people, including general facts about crystal methamphetamine and its effects, and also what to expect from the withdrawal and treatment process. We also link people with a lot of support services through that map that Katie showed you, as well as promoting our resources through both social media and other promotion avenues to try and encourage people to seek support when they need it, as we know that there's a lot of stigma surrounding crystal methamphetamine, and we're trying to help break down that it is okay to seek help if and when you need it.
Great. So we've had another one come in asking about if there's any space to provide an online resource for virtual support groups that cater to identified target groups.
Yes, so I'm assuming we're talking kind of around the peer support groups. It is a really interesting area, and we've seen some more evidence coming out about how important it is for there to be peer support, particularly through the Smart Recovery program. It is something that we're interested in doing. We will be conducting a large evaluation of the current website late next year and looking at ways that we can expand it and improve the website. And I personally would think that that would be a great expansion if we could find the funding for it.
Great. Okay. So Catherine says that this is a great project. Thank you very much. Given the high levels of illiteracy rates in Indigenous communities, how is this addressed with such a wordy program?
Great question, Catherine. We have tried a number of avenues. Firstly, we had all our fact pages reviewed by an Indigenous creative company that we were working with to try and make sure that the language was pitched in a way that was relatively easy to read and accessible. We also provide audio of all of our, well, the majority of our fact pages, I shouldn't say all, I'm pretty sure it's the majority, where you will hear people particularly reading out those key messages so that those people who might not necessarily be able to read the content can at least listen to the audio.
Okay, so James is asking if you're familiar with the Rewired and the Rewired 2.0 groups. So it looks like those ones are run by Thorn Harbour Health in Victoria, and they are for same-sex attracted men who are struggling with meth use. So it looks like that's a support group type program.
Wow, I actually hadn't heard of that before. So thank you, James, for bringing it to our attention. Yeah, so people who use methamphetamine and are also in same-sex relationships are often at a higher risk of harms, particularly if they're involved in sort of the chemsex area. So it is something that we are monitoring, and we're hoping to create more resources for that population. So thank you for letting us know about that. We'll look into it and see if we can add it into our website.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and so we also have one that's asking if the speaker who did the audio narrations was Indigenous.
Yes, we actually had 2 Indigenous people read out the content and have it recorded online. So there's some content that is an Aboriginal female voice as well as an Aboriginal male voice.
Okay, fantastic. And we had a question earlier in the chat as well, asking if there was a section for people who use ICE on the Indigenous Toolkit.
So there is one on the main site for Cracks on the Ice, but it's still in development for this part of the website. Yes, and a key part of that will be the development of the lived experience stories. So keep your eyes and ears open for when they have their grand reveal in the early new year.
Great. So we still have a little bit of time for question and answers. So just wanted to see if anyone else had any further questions that they wanted to pop in the chat for us to answer.
Maybe we did such a good job of explaining everything that everyone's so busy looking at the website, they don't have any questions, Anna.
Absolutely. Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today, Steph, and thank you, Katie. Anyone that has watched the webinar today, you are more than welcome to get in touch with us via email if you have any further questions that come up, and we'll be in touch with you as soon as possible. We'll also be holding more webinars and putting up new resources on Cracks in the Ice throughout the year. So I do encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list, which is just at cracksintheice.org.au for any future updates. Did you have anything further to add, Steph? Any final words?
No, just to say thank you for joining me, Anna, to do the Q&A portion, and also thank you to all the people who attended today. I hope you find the website useful.
Thank you for coming, everyone, today, and have a wonderful day.